Hi, everybody. This is Barbara Marison from GrantSuccess.com, and I have with me today a fabulous, fascinating person and subject, Rob Schwartz, and he's from A Soul's Plan, is what his specialty is, and I want to welcome him for being here. Thank you so much for being here, Rob.
Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you today.
So this is such an interesting subject, and I know, like, I've been speaking to a lot of people about it, and they're like so interested in it because we all try to figure out what we're doing here and why we're here and why things happen to us. And you are an expert on the subject. How did you get involved in this? How did you start to do what you do?
Well, what happened in my case, and let me begin by saying my website is yoursoulsplan.com, and people can read large portions of Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift for free on that website. What happened in my case is that I was actually in the corporate sector for a number of years. I have an MBA, so probably an atypical background for the author of a couple of New Age books. And back in 2003, I was doing freelance corporate marketing and communications, which I did not enjoy at all, and feeling lost, feeling like there was something else I was supposed to be doing with my life, but I didn't know what it was, and basically having an existential crisis. And so I tried very conventional ways to resolve this crisis. I went for career counseling. That didn't really help. I talked to all my friends and family and said, well, you know, what do you think I should be doing with my life? And they all said they had no idea. That didn't help. So I thought, okay, I've got to think outside the box here. What can I do to figure out what I should be doing with my life? And this idea came to me, go see a psychic medium. Now, mediumship is not part of my background. I come from a very conventional background. I wasn't even sure that I believed in mediumship, but nothing else was working. And so I thought, why not? I should give this a try. So I did this on May 7 of 2003. I had my first session ever with a psychic medium. She starts off the session by saying, your spirit guides are here. And I said, what's a spirit guide? I'd never even heard the term before. And she said, well, a spirit guide is a highly evolved non-physical being with whom you plan your life before you come into body and who then guides you after you get here. And then she said, your guides would like to talk to you. And then she starts to channel them. And they say to me, you planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. And I'll tell you, I just shook my head and I said, well, why in the world would I have done that? And they said, you did this for purposes of spiritual growth. Now, coming as I did from such a conventional background, I probably would have just dismissed all of this as some kind of delusion on my part, except that they then started to go through my challenges one by one and explain to me why I had planned them. I had not told them anything about myself. I had not told the medium anything about myself, but they knew what all my challenges had been. They knew everything about me. And so, as you can imagine, this rocked my world, so to speak. I came out of that session with my mind blown open, and I thought about this perspective constantly. And what it did, it created quite a deep healing for me because it allowed me to see deeper meaning in things that previously appeared not to have any deeper meaning. And then when I saw the healing that it created for me, I thought, okay, then this idea can create a similar kind of healing for other people. That was when I first started to think about writing the book that became Your Soul's Plan. And then a number of years after that, Your Soul's Gift came out. And there were other things that happened along the way, certain spiritual experiences that propelled me forward. But it was that session with the medium and the conversation with my guides that really got it all started.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I think everybody would love to have that because everybody's confused about their lives and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing or why they're here and why they're upset about things. And so learning about what the challenges or why you're here, you really can get to understand why you're here and what you planned before you got here.
Yeah, you know, it's a difficult concept to wrap your mind around if you've never been exposed to it before, and particularly the planning of challenges. You know, people can easily believe that they would plan something joyful, something loving, but it's much harder to wrap your mind around the idea that you would plan the death of a loved one or a severe illness or a severe accident or anything like that. But once you get accustomed to this way of thinking, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. And one of the things that I learned through my research for Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift is that our perspective when we're on the other side, when we're planning challenges in a lifetime, it's very different than when we're here in body. From the other side, we know that a life is very brief, that nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here, and yet the wisdom from the challenges becomes part of us literally for all eternity. So from that perspective, it actually does make sense that people would plan great challenges.
From a higher place, like I think that, I mean, I know certain people in my life have bigger challenges than others, and of course everybody has challenges, but why somebody would pick to be sick or to have a big physical challenge or a financial challenge or died when they're very young. And but they all plan that before they get here, and it all makes sense.
Yeah, those kinds of things are planned before we get here. Now, it's important to clarify, though, what we mean when we use the word planned. Planned very rarely means planned as a certainty. It mostly means planned as a possibility or a probability. Now, there are certain things, a small number of things that are planned as certainties. For example, your choice of parents. Once you're born, obviously you can't undo that choice. Your parents are who they are, so that's planned as a certainty. Or if you plan, for example, to be born with a physical handicap that can't be treated by medical science in whatever time period you're incarnating in, and you would know that before coming into body, then short of what we call a miracle, you will have that physical handicap for the duration of that lifetime. But the vast majority of things are planned as potentials. And whether or not they actualize depend upon your free will decisions. So for example, I researched people's pre-birth plans with mediums and channels. And one of the mediums describes that when she goes into a person's pre-birth planning session, Spirit shows her something that to her looks like an incredibly vast and elaborate flow chart. Well, what is a flow chart? It's a series of decision points. If you do A, then X happens. If you do B, then Y happens. The flow chart that Spirit shows her is so vast and intricate that it's really beyond human comprehension. But that flow chart represents the soul taking into account all of the free will decisions that the personality might make. So depending upon how you use your free will, you will call certain challenges to you, but not call certain other challenges to you. Basically, the bottom line is that you're calling to you whatever experiences you most need in order to evolve.
So, like, if people are trying to make things happen, if they get into financial difficulties and they can't seem to get out of it, no matter what they do, or they need to lose weight and they can't seem to lose weight no matter what they do, is this part of like a plan to learn how to handle life or what they need to learn here?
So there are a handful of main reasons why people can plan challenges before they're born. And we could probably spend an hour talking about any of them, but just to list them quickly, they are balancing and releasing karma, healing, which refers to healing unhealed energies from past lifetimes, service to others, experiencing contrast, and correcting false beliefs or false feelings about oneself. And under the umbrella of service to others, there's a very prominent subcategory, which is cultivating and expressing certain qualities that are important to the soul that I refer to as divine virtues. These are things like compassion, unconditional love, empathy, faith, trust, and so on. So you could plan a challenge for any of those reasons or any combination thereof. When you talk about people experiencing financial hardship or some kind of ongoing illness, if it's something that they can't correct through their free will decisions, then there could possibly be an agreement in place that this is just to balance karma. And it's not a punishment. It's intended to be a learning experience that they themselves chose before they came into body. But most things can eventually be changed and improved through the use of one's free will. basically, once you learn the underlying lessons, whatever those might be, then the challenge will just sort of mysteriously dissolve. But if you make free will decisions in which you choose not to learn the underlying lessons, then you're going to keep calling the same type of challenge to you again and again. And what will usually happen is that it will come back in increasingly intense form each time. And if you see that kind of pattern in your life, that is your soul really trying to get your attention about something.
So is it kind of like just accept that that's what's happening right now and just let it be okay and find
That,
make peace with it?
yeah, acceptance is actually one of the divine virtues. And acceptance is very, very important because when you're not in acceptance of what's going on, that means by definition that you're in a state of resistance. And it's actually the resistance that causes the suffering, not the challenge itself. So you want to do anything you can to decrease resistance and increase acceptance. And one very powerful way to do those things is to determine what the underlying lessons are. Because the more you can see the gift in the challenge, the more you can see the underlying growth and learning and healing and evolution, the less resistant you will be and the more accepting you will be.
And how does one go about doing that to find out what the underlying reason might be?
Well, there are a number of ways to do that, actually a surprisingly large number of ways. I'm biased, I'm a hypnotist, and I practice one of those ways, which is called a between lives soul regression. It's a form of hypnosis in which you start with some preliminary steps to help you relax physically and then mentally, and then I guide the client into a past life. It's almost always a past life that had a big impact on the plan for the current lifetime. So the person experiences several scenes in the past life, the last one of which will be the death scene. Their consciousness leaves the body in the death scene and crosses back over to the other side, which I realize might sound a little bit ominous, but there's actually nothing to it. When they get to the other side, most people are greeted by a spirit guide. They talk to the guide about why they were shown that particular past life and why it's important to know about it now. And then the guide takes them to what is called the Council of Elders. The council consists of the very wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who oversee reincarnation on Earth. They know everything about you. So they can tell you why you planned every single challenge in your life, what the underlying lessons are, how well you're doing in terms of learning those lessons, and what you need to do to wrap it up and finish learning those lessons. Now, some people don't want to do hypnosis or they have difficulty doing it. If that's the case, there are many other things you can look at: astrology, numerology, iridology, palmistry, mediums and channels, automatic writing, meditation, dream work. In India, something called nadi leaf reading, a body of channel literature called the Michael system that talks about soul plans. Any one of those things that I just listed could give you a lot of insight.
That's really interesting. Now, when we're on the other side and we're planning our life to come, do we talk to our parents that we're going to have and our siblings, or is it just between us and our angels or guides?
No, you talk to all these significant people and actually a number of the minor people who will play roles in the upcoming lifetime. And basically the gist of the discussion is, what do we want to learn? What kind of roles can we play for each other that will foster that learning? That's pretty much the focus of the discussion. So you choose your parents, parents choose their children, you talk to your future friends, your future teachers, employers, enemies, if you're actually planning to have enemies. All of these souls will come into your pre-birth planning session, and you will say to them, here's what I want to learn in the upcoming lifetime. I'd like you to play this particular role for me at this particular time. Sometimes people accept that right away, and they say, sure, I'd be happy to play that role for you. Sometimes they're a little bit reluctant, especially if it's a negative or challenging kind of role. And so a little bit of negotiation or discussion takes place to get everybody comfortable with what kind of role will be played. But everything is laid out, again, as a potential, though, not so much as a certainty.
So if you're having issues with your parents or your siblings or whatever, instead of fighting it. Because I know we all do. We get into arguments and fight, and we get mad, and we have nothing to do with the other one. But know that there's something great here, and we have to just, if we can't figure out what it is, to just let it be who it is and accept and forgive and do compassion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a very good question to ask is, if I planned this, whatever this refers to, why might I have done that? And when you phrase the question that way, number one, it doesn't actually require you to believe in pre-birth planning. You're just saying, if I planned this, why might I have done that? But by asking that kind of a question, you immediately get to the underlying deeper meaning. And once you know what the underlying lessons are, then you can go about learning them in a much more conscious and much less painful and much less arduous manner.
That sounds great, because like I know, like, if there's times like I get upset about with certain people, and I'm like, but it's also trying to think, well, just try to understand them or try to see why we're doing that. And do we have a relationship with other people that we want to try to help, but we can't seem to help them? Should we just back off and let them do what they need to do and not try to help anyone or specific people?
That I think you have to take on a case-by-case basis and really trust your intuition. It's not so much something you're going to reason out in an analytic way, but if you have a pre-birth agreement with somebody to help them, you will have what we might call a desire in your heart, or a heart's desire to be of service to that person. And depending upon how strong the heart's desire is, that gives you an indication of how big a role it plays in the other person's life plan. Ultimately, everybody has to help themselves. You can't force your help upon anybody else, nor would you want to, because then it interferes with their free will, and it also blocks them from learning the underlying lessons. But you can certainly offer, again and again, if you want to, your assistance to somebody else. But if they choose not to take it, you have to respect that.
Well, I think like that there's so many people that don't go deep at all, and they're just going out living their lives. They have no idea how they're affecting people. But people like us who are on the spiritual path, and we're learning to go further into our spiritual side, but the other person is not, and sometimes it can be extremely difficult to deal with the way that they are to us. How do we do it? Just back to acceptance and compassion, and understand that they're coming from a place of their own, whatever it is.
I think the best thing to do in a situation like that is to simply model the results of following the spiritual path. In other words, most people who are on a serious spiritual path, after a certain amount of time and effort, they have more joy, they have more peace, they have more harmony, more abundance generally in their life. They'll just be happier. And so this other person that you're interested in helping, that person will notice that you are more joyful, more peaceful, more happy. They might or might not come to you and say, hey, what are you doing? I'd like to be in on the secret. If they do say something like that, then wonderful, you have your opportunity to help them. But even if they never say that, they're watching you, and they will notice the benefits of your spiritual path in your life. And that plants a seed. Maybe the seed germinates sometime soon. Maybe it doesn't germinate for years or decades. That's not your responsibility. But you can plant the seed just by being a model.
I think, well, I know in my case, sometimes that when I start to plant seeds and people see a change in me, they dig the hills even deeper to be completely opposite. Is that like, if people aren't happy, they don't like to see happy people, and that's kind of the way it is sometimes.
That does happen. Again, you just have to let everybody choose their own path for themselves. Even the people that choose from your perspective to continue down a path of unhappiness, that might actually be the path that is for their highest and greatest good. Because when the unhappiness hits a certain level of intensity, even if it brings them to their knees, that's often the point at which they're teachable. And when they become teachable, then things start to turn around.
It is interesting because I am seeing that in somebody in my life that it's been an interesting relationship for the whole time. But now I'm seeing them turn around because they see the good in me. They see what I'm projecting. And although they'll never say it, or maybe they will someday, I don't know, but not now. But they're coming around more and being able to get a little bit of what I have without asking for it, without knowing anything about it. So it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, and I think that that's really all that anybody can do.
Well, it's really fascinating. I think that, and so it's really just like what you do is take them back to their in between lives. And I think sometimes about my next life. I mean, I guess it's not something I should even think about. But when the time comes when I go on the other side, I'll decide what I want for the next life. You get to decide what you want to do the next life.
Yeah, what I've seen in my work is that people have what you could call an arc of lives. So an arc of lives is a series or a set of lifetimes in which you're working on the same underlying lessons. And hopefully the arc is in a positive direction. So with each subsequent lifetime, you go a little deeper and a little deeper into whatever the lessons are. And then at a certain point, you'll feel complete with those lessons. And then you'll go on to another arc of lives in which you work on other lessons.
Do you always come back? Do you have to come back? Do you want to come back?
My understanding is that you do not have to come back or forced to do anything you don't want to do. But again, your perspective when you're on the other side is very different than when you're here. And from the other side, you see much more clearly what an incredible learning opportunity the Earth School is. So you're much more likely to decide when you're not embodied to come back, even though you may not feel that way while you're embodied.
Yeah, I guess if you have an idea, even if you don't do your hypnosis or do any of this other practice you were talking about, but have an idea of why somebody's in your life or not, and leaves your life. Is that usually the case, or is this our mind playing with us?
So I had a little trouble hearing you. Can you ask the question again?
That if somebody's in your life and they leave your life, or they that you feel that they shouldn't be in your, or why they were in your life and why they left. If my mind is telling me, well, this is why so and so came in and this is why so and so left. Is it my mind telling me that, or my soul telling me that?
That can be a difficult question to answer. What you want to look for to figure out the answer to that question is, how does it feel when you think certain thoughts about why somebody is in your life or why somebody left your life? The ego, the analytic mind, will speak to you in terms of judgment, fear, separation, and attack. If the thoughts fall into any of those four areas, you can figure it's coming from the ego. Your soul will talk to you only in loving terms that do not create feelings of fear. The soul speaks in feelings of excitement, joy, inspiration, and aspiration. The things you are inspired by and the things you aspire to do, those are indications that it's coming from your soul.
And I also, I know some people say that they can feel the other person. And I know a lot of people that I talk to, they have no idea. They can't feel somebody who died, or they can't see them. But some people can. Now, why can some people see people that died and some people can't?
Well, sometimes that's part of a pre-birth plan. Whatever it is that you wanted to learn, you felt that you could learn it better if you had some form of communication with loved ones who have crossed over. Sometimes that's a gift that people have honed over multiple past lifetimes, and they bring it forward into the current lifetime as a pre-existing gift. And some of it just has to do with your DNA and how you're wired in a particular lifetime, and also social conditioning. In Western societies, there's a great emphasis on the rational And so people in Western societies are conditioned in ways that I think make it harder to communicate with loved ones who have crossed over. In Eastern societies, that's not as big an issue, particularly if you grow up in a family that emphasizes things like meditation, which is much more commonly emphasized in the East than it is in the West.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been fascinating. I mean, I know, and you also make it like not so scary to die, to go on the other side, and that it might be okay. I mean, I know they talk a lot about that in the spiritual world, that crossing over is okay. Like you don't have to worry about dying so much, and you never die, really. But I think that this is just like fascinating. And you said, like, how can people get in touch with you?
The website is yoursoulsplan.com. There's a contact page on the website to send a message. I'd like to mention I have an online workshop that is based upon my two books, Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift. We call the workshop Awakening to Your Life Purpose, Discovering Your Life Plan. And there are 4 components to it, a talk I give based on the books. We do the Divine Virtues exercise that tells you the qualities you're working on, which is one of the reasons you planned your challenges. And then we do 2 group hypnotic regressions, one to contact loved ones on the other side, and the other is a group between lives regression in which you go to the Council of Elders and ask any questions you have about your life plan. So by the time people come out of that workshop, they have a much better idea of what they planned, why, how they're doing in terms of fulfilling the plan, and what else they need to do to complete fulfilling the plan.
Interesting. And I guess that if they don't do that, just start to look at challenges as good or an interesting way to be, not get upset by them.
Yeah, a very simple and easy thing to do when a challenge arises, instead of thinking or saying, why is this happening to me? Think to yourself, why is this happening for me? And when you put the question that way, you get to the underlying lessons, and then you can learn them in a much more conscious and less painful way.
And so I guess you have to be quiet to try to listen to get the answers.
Well, this is why meditation is really so very important. I always tell people, you know, the 2 most important things you can do on a spiritual path are prayer and meditation. Those 2 things will take any person 80% of where they want to go. The other 20% is going to be something that's unique to you.
Well, it's just been absolutely fascinating. And I know, like everybody, some people want this video before, as soon as they get it, they want to hear it, they want to hear what you were talking about. And I'm just so grateful that you were here. And I think that everybody else will be, and you guys, you know, listening to Rob and you can get on his website. We will put everything on our website, so people can get it. And thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.